David, did we all make an agreement that every time we do an appearance, we're going to wear our Quality Leering Center sweatshirts and hoodies?
Absolutely.
I noticed Nick doesn't do an appearance without wearing his hoodie. This is the first time I've seen you in the Quality Leering Center gear.
Did you see the video of him dropping one off at Omar's office? Johan Omar's office?
No.
After he testified, he went over to her office. He made a special clip just of that. It's the woman like she was holding something radioactive, her staff member, like a dead skunk. She's holding it.
She's holding it far away from her body in case she gets contaminated.
She doesn't slam the door, but she closes it quickly.
Hey, David, take me back in time. So I have interviewed Nick a couple of times, and he told me that he heard from you on social media. You reached out to him. So take me back to before that moment. You're a lifelong Minnesotan. I know this wasn't a story that was completely hidden in the closet in Minnesota. Some people knew, people talked about it locally. But how did this hit your radar that this was happening in Minnesota?
Well, my office happens to be in Minneapolis, and I'm in an area with a fairly high concentration of the Somali population. And I started to notice that there were all these childcare facilities popping up. And some of them had two of them on the same block. And growing up here, I don't remember ever seeing a childcare facility anywhere. And I thought, well, who's going to these childcare facilities? Is there a surge in our population of our children? What is this? And so I noticed when I go by that a lot of times the lights weren't on, the snow would fall, there were no footprints around the facility, there were no tire tracks in the parking lot. And I said, well, it says they're open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 2 to 10 or open 24 hours. And I said, but I've never ever seen any children at any of these facilities. So I started to sit down the street and I would just watch these facilities in the morning, and I'd see no children. I'd come back in the afternoon, no children. I'd come back in the evening, because some of them say they're open until 10 o'clock. And I go, well, these are pretty scary places. I mean, they're commercial buildings, they're industrial buildings. Who in the world is going to bring their child here during the day, let alone at night? And so that's when I said, there's something going on here that just doesn't look right. Then I started to see all these vans driving around town, and there's always a Somali driver and never any passengers. They never had a phone number on the van. It's just some name and then a number on the back of the van. And I said, well, who are they bringing? So I started to look into the child care and who owned the child care. And then that segued into the transportation companies. And it was 100% Somali owned, all of it.
So this starts out, David, just you having an office in an area where you had a big exposure to the Somali community, and you just noticing stuff that looked weird. Not a newspaper report, not even rumor, and certainly not the research that you ended up doing where you looked into the public records on how much money these guys were getting. But it just started out with, it just looked weird in your neighborhood.
Right. And so I said, well, what else is involved? What's in play here? And then I started to see adult daycare. And then these autism centers started popping up. And I said, this doesn't fit. I mean, it just doesn't make sense that we could have all these childcare and transportation companies and autism centers and adult daycares. And so when I started digging into it, what really set me off into the childcare side of things was I was sitting at a stoplight in Minneapolis, and I looked over and I saw Quality Learning Center, and I'm looking at the sign and I said, Quality Learning Center. I said, no, it says Quality Learning Center. So not only was that word misspelled, but on the door, 1411 Nicollet Avenue, they had the word Nicollet misspelled. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm diving into this head first. And so I'd already started looking at it. That's when I started to go after all the numbers. And from the outside, if somebody tries to get the information I have, they can't get it. It's virtually impossible to get. And so I had some folks who helped me who were more computer savvy, and we extracted this information. And so the CCAP numbers that I came up with, that's child care assistance payments, that's only one part of the pot of gold that these facilities are getting. There's also Great Start, which is money that goes towards training the staff. Well, if you don't have any children, you don't have any staff. So it was like syrup on top of chocolate. It just was more money, more. Then you had grant money, you had county money, you had city money, and still no children at any of the child care facilities ever, not once in 7 years. Never saw one child there.
So you see Quality Learning Center and you see the name of the street misspelled, and that really ignites the spark. You'd already started noticing the weirdness of the disproportionate number of adult care, child care, transportation, but this sets you off, and you say it's really hard, though, at that point to get data, to get information. Why is it so hard? I would think, this is public money, this is public record.
So I believe it's made difficult intentionally by the politicians and the people who are sort of driving all of this, because I believe that the Somalis didn't come up with this fraud scheme on their own. I think the framework for this was constructed by politicians. And what I think they did is back in the late 70s and 80s, we had a huge influx of Hmong into the Twin Cities. They're coming to the Lutheran Church, the Catholic Church, because of what was going on over there in Cambodia and Laos. Well, I think that framework was already in place, and they expected the Hmong people to fall in line, go on welfare, and then construct this whole fraudulent scheme of childcare and transportation. And the Hmong didn't do that. The Hmong came here and they said, we're going to work. It's shameful for our people to do this. So the politicians, mostly Democrats, of course, said, well, that didn't work. So they went to find another ethnic group, and they found the Somalis, and they said, oh, these people are going to do exactly what we want. So they started bringing the Somalis over really in probably the late 80s, mid to late 80s. And then it exploded in 91 and 92. That's when a huge number of Somalis started. And that's when this whole scheme was put in motion. And so it's not something that just happened overnight. This has been developed over years.
Okay, let's enjoy this little historical diversion for just a moment before we come back to the fraud as it exists today. The Hmong population of Minnesota is fascinating to me that I knew nothing about until I saw the Clint Eastwood movie, which I'm not sure it is set. I think that's actually set in Michigan. But the upper Midwest Hmong diaspora, I didn't have any idea as a guy from Texas that existed, going back, like you said, to the 70s. And that's pretty fascinating. And now that's an Asian culture. You say it didn't take to the, here is the welfare scheme we'd love for you to begin to dominate. It's curious why a Hmong population, I mean, Cambodia and Laos are warm. I've always been curious why Somalis end up in Minnesota. That's a very hot climate. I mean, I understand why Norwegians and Finnish end up in Minnesota. You end up in a place that looks a lot like home. But how is that happening? Do you know that, David? Like, why are first the Hmong and then the Somalis ending up in the upper Midwest in Minnesota?
Well, it's exactly right. It really doesn't make sense, because you think they'd be going to Florida, Texas, Arizona. And for them to be here, it's sort of an anomaly. It sort of sticks out. But the reason I have access to all this information, and I'm dead accurate with what I'm saying, is that my wife's sister was the director of the United Cambodian Association of Minnesota. My wife is from Cambodia. And so when you have these separate Asian groups, you have Hmong, you have Vietnamese, you have Laotian, and they really kind of are their own communities, but they band together when it's in their interest. And so that's how I got to know leaders of the Cambodian community, the Vietnamese community, the Hmong community, the Laotian community. So that's how I knew that the Hmong were first brought in to fit into this fraud framework set up really by the Democrats. And it just didn't work. I mean, they set up communities and they flourished in St. Paul. I mean, it's a phenomenal success story what the Hmong have done here in Minnesota. And so that's why they went and got the Somalis. And I said, well, exactly, why would you come to Minnesota of all the places? And it was 21 below zero today in Minnesota, 50 below wind chill. And I mean, it's not where they come from. And so it didn't make sense, which is another thing that kind of stuck out. But you kind of say, well, we're a nation of immigrants. I mean, it's okay. Everybody, I mean, my wife's Cambodian. I got mixed race kids. But my wife is so grateful every day. She literally kisses the ground. She's so thankful to be here in the United States. She would never do anything to hurt our country.
And in both of those groups, specifically the Hmong and the Somalis, they come to America as refugees, fleeing something in their country that is a legitimate threat. Do you sense, and I ask you this because you're a lifelong Minnesotan, you have direct exposure to the Cambodian migrant community. Do you think it's different in how those two refugee populations have thought about their relationship to the United States?
I think it's polar opposites. And I say that because the Hmong retain their culture, but they're so happy and they like American values. They are good community members. They're taxpayers. They're hardworking. The difference is that the Somalis, so they're, the history of Somalia, where it was ruled by Italy and Britain, and then 91 they had the essentially the civil war, which is still going on. And the Somalis came over and they didn't assimilate at all. In fact, one of the guys who's running for a Minnesota Senate seat just came out and said he wants to make this area of Minneapolis where Nick and I filmed at Cedar Avenue, he wants to make that a no-go zone for white people.
Yeah, it's incredible. I saw that. If you're not familiar with those are littered across Europe, no-go zones, either religious or ethnically. I mean, even the police don't really go into some of these areas of Paris, for example. It's not something we can see here at home in America. Okay, so what is your reason? So this welfare ultimate fraud apparatus that you believe was created during the 70s that didn't take with the Hmong does end up taking with Somalis. What's the point of it? Why would a politician, you make the claim that they didn't stumble into this. This entire thing was created and they fit in like a Lego into its piece. What's the purpose of creating this entire system?
Well, the purpose is to ensure a solid voting bloc for the Democrats. Bring them over, put them on welfare, put them into this fraud scheme, and then you're guaranteed that they're going to vote Democrat. And the numbers, I keep hearing numbers of 80,000 Somalis in Minnesota. I said, you guys are crazy. It's like 250,000 here in the state right now. And this fraud scheme is played out in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the whole Twin Cities area. It's in Rochester, home of the Mayo Clinic. It's in Faribault, Minnesota, which is farm country. It's about an hour and 10 minutes south of the cities. It's in Owatonna, which is down by the Iowa border. And it's very heavily in St. Cloud, which is about an hour northwest of the cities. In fact, St. Cloud State University, the population of that school has dropped more than 50% in the last 10 years. 50%. And there are mosques that have opened up across the street from St. Cloud State University. That school is not going to survive. That city, it's wow. Like Dearborn, Michigan. It can't be rescued at this point.
And while the system, you contend, was created by politicians, what happened and why it proliferates? So the Somali, and I've done this story, David, but the country of Somalia itself is very corrupt. It is full of fraud. Its politics, its culture, its economy, its way of life, which suggests, at least in part, that there is a greater cultural tolerance for this way of making a living. So why does it proliferate? If it's created in the 70s and 80s by politicians, it seems to have taken like a duck to water with the Somali community, and it spreads out all the way across. So what is it? Word just spreads. Hey, this is a great way to get some money, build these daycare, adult care, transportation companies, and tap into Medicare?
So that's exactly what happened. And so the Minneapolis was the incubator for all these programs. They wanted to test these social programs out and see what can we get away with here? Because people in Minnesota, this whole Minnesota nice, they're really gullible. So what can we get away with here? So then they started expanding the programs. And then once they saw that this would work, then they went to Columbus, Ohio, and you see Columbus is having all these problems now. And then they started to expand out across the United States. It's the same playbook for all of these fraud structures that are around the country. It was all developed right here in Minneapolis. at Cedar Square West, which is a housing complex that when I went to university was all student housing. Now it's 100% Somali housing. And I talked about in my podcast with Nick about how they get people out and move the Somalis in. And so once they knew that this was the pot of gold here, they started sending out the word around the country, and that a lot of the Somalis came from other states because they knew that they could get away with this fraud here in Minnesota.
So there's a big question lurking in the background. While we talked about the political history, there's also the political present. And can something like this go on without the complicity or the ignorance, willful ignorance, from politicians like Attorney General Keith Ellison, Governor Tim Walz, maybe Mayor Jacob Frey? And the intuition by most is it's too big to have gone ignored. But if it's fanning out, does that suggest there's politicians everywhere who are also in on it in some way, complicit in some way? Or does that undercut the idea that you need local politicians to be complicit?
They are complicit. They know exactly what's going on. This is not accidental. And so what's interesting is as this thing has evolved, firstly, Tim Walz said there's no fraud, there's no fraud. Now he admits to knowing about the fraud early in his first term. So let's say 2020. Well, what did he do about it? Now he says there's organized crime that's responsible for the fraud. I said, organized crime? Well, what are you doing? I mean, he just admitted there's organized crime. Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis for years said there's no fraud, there's no fraud. I kept emailing him twice a week. And finally he came out a couple of weeks ago and he said, yeah, there's fraud. And he called it a fraud crisis after denying the fraud for years. So one thing that also is odd is Governor Walz is not from Minnesota. Keith Ellison is not from Minnesota. Jacob Frey is not from Minnesota. The mayor of St. Paul is not from Minnesota. So it's just odd that all these people are from other parts of the country, and how that plays into it, I don't know. But it just, you have this set of Minnesota values, and the Hmong came here and they shared those values of hard work and being a good citizen. The Somalis are just completely opposite. So draw your own conclusion.
It's interesting that you talk about the politicians having admitted now to the existence of fraud. I see all these videos, David, of people on the streets of Minnesota during what's going on right now. And there's just kind of a denial. There's a denial that exists or denial that it's a big deal. I've seen the man on the street interviews where people try to stop, not the protesters, not the rioters, but some people that I guess are walking around on their way to work in Minnesota, and they don't want to talk with yeah, that's it. They make it seem like it's outside noise, politicized partisan noise. So, like, how do Minnesotans feel about it? Are they ignoring it? Their mayor's admitting it, so they don't care? Is it not a big deal? They still worried about being called a racist if you point to the fact that it's largely Somalis? Like, what's the deal with Minnesotans?
Well, you're exactly right. The fear of being labeled a racist or an Islamophobe is very prescient here in Minnesota. And it's something where, again, that Minnesota nice, I talked about it before, it's become a curse where you got to look and say, okay, well, you can be Minnesota nice, but facts are the facts. And look at this fraud. I mean, I didn't make this stuff up. And here's the other thing. If what I've said in my videos and my testimony and everything, if what I've said is false, why is nobody suing me? Why is nobody saying, no, he's wrong, here are the actual numbers? They can't, because everything that I put out there is 100% accurate. And so people from Minnesota, a lot from around the country have contacted me and they've said, yeah, this is terrible, this fraud's terrible. And I say, well, you gotta contact your legislator. You can't just sit by and go, beat your chest and go, that's terrible. Somebody had to do something. I mean, you can come to me, but I'm just one guy. I can't do the whole thing. I'm not Atlas. I can't put the world on my shoulders, but I'm trying to get the recognition that this problem exists and it's bad. And everybody has to speak out about it instead of just pretending that it's not a problem for them. It is. It's in their backyard.
Before you reached out to Nick, going back to our timeline and now advancing ourselves into history, before, just in the months and I guess maybe years before you reached out to Nick, what were you doing? You just mentioned emailing Mayor Frey. Like, now you've got the data, you've got the observational witness. What are you doing to try to red flag it at that point, and what's the reaction?
And I should point out too that I work full time. I mean, I've been working full time my whole life. And when I started to put together this whole fraud picture, it was so big that trying to tackle this whole thing, it's impossible. So I asked God, I said, well, I need to focus on one area that's going to strike home with people. And that's why I picked the childcare first and got the data for the childcare. And then I knew that the non-emergency medical transportation was also going to be a part of the picture, but that was going to be secondary to the childcare. So that's why when I talked with, so I looked around at influencers on the internet and I said, I can't go to the local media with this because they're going to just kill it. I have to broadcast this on a worldwide basis, and I need somebody who can be the face of this because I'm just some guy. And I went around and looked at all these different influencers, and I saw Nick Shirley. I said, "That's my guy." And so I started messaging Nick, and finally he calls me at like 9:30 on a Friday night, December 12th of last year, and he said, "Well, I suppose I ought to call you. Keep messaging me." And then I told him what I had, and he said, "Well, this is unbelievable." He said, "I'm coming to Minnesota. I'll be there Monday. We start filming on Tuesday." He said, "I got it all laid out." But I needed Nick because he's so genuine and likable, and he's unflappable. When we're out there and Somalis are screaming at us and swearing at us, he stays on point. And I needed him to be the guy, and it worked out. I mean, I think that video's got 200 million views or whatever. It's a big number. And the point being that we wanted to shine a light on this fraud and then let people know, go look and see if this is happening in your backyard. And we've heard from Washington State, Texas, Michigan. You saw what's going on in Maine. They have a huge fraud problem. So I'm hoping that this doesn't just get churned through on the news cycle, that people stay focused on this and they contact their legislators and said, we're not going to put up with this.
So I think I started doing this story on the Fox News channel sometime in November or December. And the first time it hit my radar was by a write-up, I believe, in the City Journal, and Chris Rufo and a couple of other guys. And I know that they had borrowed a lot by research and reporting that had been done by other people, which may as well include you, David. But you mentioned Nick comes along in December, and I remember the video dropping really over Christmas break and how much it broke through compared to what I've been able to do, even with 2.5 million viewers every day, the way that it broke through. What again was it about Nick that you were like, this is the guy I want to reach out to? This is the guy that can tell this story and help it break through?
Well, when I saw the videos, I liked Nick's demeanor and the fact that he was willing to go in there and, slug it out in the mud, but he never lost his cool. And when I spoke with him on the phone, I just said, well, you're coming to Minneapolis. We're going to make 2 videos. We're going to do the first childcare, then we're going to do transportation. And he goes, well, okay, let's one thing at a time. I said, so you got to come. And then he called me back right after we finished talking. He said, okay, I'll be there Monday. And then we'll start filming on Tuesday. But I want to go back to something we talked about earlier. So how is this whole fraud being allowed to propagate? And when I spoke at Secretary Besant's roundtable a few weeks ago here in the Twin Cities, they were talking about SARS and money wires and money going to Saudi Arabia and Kenya because they never send it back to Somalia. They don't want that direct line. So they go around to Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabia is across the Red Sea from Somalia and Kenya borders Somalia. So it's an easy, and then it hits that halal wire system and it's not part of the international banking community. So they have no idea what happens with that money. So my point with Secretary Besant is if you go chasing the money wires and the SARS, you're letting the tail wag the dog. You have to go to the source of the funding. And in Minnesota, that's the Department of Human Services. You got to go in there and tell them, look, if you're writing checks to fraudulent businesses and it involves federal money, you run the risk of federal prosecution. Federal, not state, federal. You got to scare these people so they're going to say, wait, on this company, I got to make sure they're legitimate. Go Google Street View and pull up the address. It's a liquor store. It's an apartment building. You can't have be a transportation company. And they're so scared or so lazy that they don't do any of that.
Incredible. What's life been like, really, since late December. What's life been like for you after you and Nick go public with what you found?
It's been pretty scary, and I was taught by the security team we had on our videos that you got to watch the hands. Don't let anybody come behind you. Don't shake anybody's hand if you don't know them, because you could get stabbed. And so Nick and I when we were filming, we had bulletproof, stab-proof vests on, and that was the security team who, at their directive, that we do that. And so that's why you can see the bulkiness on our second video, that we're wearing those vests. And so I do have security at my home, and I walk that fine line between terrifying my wife and the kids and being safe, because I don't want to, because I've just made my own prison, and I don't want to live like that. But I do have to be cognizant of who I'm around. People contact me and they say there's somebody and I don't know who they are. So it's a whole different life, but it's something that I would do again, because instead of sitting there saying somebody had to do something about this, I did something about it. And now I'm going to accept whatever comes my way as part of having done that.
Well, I hope that's not a price to pay. We pray that you stay safe, David. You are literally the definition of a citizen journalist in this story. Appreciate the work that you've done, and appreciate you spending some time with us today here on Will Cain Country.
Thanks, Will. God bless America.
Okay, God bless America. Thank you, David Hoch. 20 days, one historic move, an unbelievable journey. Melania from Amazon MGM Studios captures the one-of-a-kind transition into the White House, showcasing the planning, pressure, and personal moments that come with stepping into the role of First Lady for a second time. From logistical complexities to decisions made behind closed doors, the film brings you closer to Mrs. Trump and her family as they return to the nation's capital. See what history looks like before the doors officially open. Melania arrives exclusively in theaters January 30th, 2026. Questions, advice from you, the Willisha. Will call on Will Cain Country. Normally streaming live every Monday through Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern at the Will Cain Country YouTube. Follow us on Spotify and Apple. Now, to take us through this Friday episode of Will Call, the most electric man in broadcasting, Tinfoil Pat, along with his sidekick, Two-A-Days Dan.
That's right, Will. So the Willisha has really let me down. I don't want to say that normally, but listen, guys, it is Will Cain Show at Fox.com or Will Cain Podcast at Fox.com. You can send in your questions for advice to Will, and he will answer it. I know that, someone out there is they overspent at Target and they're worried about their husband, what he's going to say, or maybe, they're a little too affectionate with their dog, their relationship's getting too close. I don't know what it is. I know you guys have those questions. You need Will's advice. So email us, not just your, social media clips and everything. So anyway, but we do have some other questions that we're going to start out with, and this is one of them. This woman found out that her husband has been faking going to work. So she says, found out my husband has been pretending to go to work for 3 months. He leaves every morning at 8, comes home tired at 6. Today I found a termination letter from October in his bag. I checked our savings and realized he's been draining it to fake his paycheck deposits every 2 weeks. And he was sitting next to me yesterday complaining about his boss, even though he hasn't worked there in 3 months. He lied to me to my face every day for 90 days, and the money's almost gone. I honestly don't know what to do.
Is that worse than cheating?
No. No.
That's your future.
I feel for this man. I do feel for this man. This man is hanging on by a thread. This man is hanging on to the last thing left in the golf bag. The last club. Every other one is left by the green on hole 1 through 17. And that last club that he has left is dignity. And he's trying to maintain the appearance of dignity. And I feel for this man. He's going to some great lengths, too. Set aside draining the savings to fake a paycheck deposit. He's complaining about his boss. He's going deep. He's going deep into his improv.
You need details.
And that's a real dedication to his dignity. I do think there's some concerns about his trustworthiness. I think this would be key. This would be key. Has he been looking for a job? Has he been beating the pavement? Has he been trying to get a new job? Was he trying to transition seamlessly? What was he doing from 8 to 6? What would one do if they weren't looking for a job? No good is the answer, right? Sit in his truck all day, go to the strip club.
Head to the bar,
that
play
could
some
be
billiards.
where the savings headed. Yeah. I don't know. I think that's my main thing is, okay, I get why you're protecting your pride. I get why you didn't want me to know. Don't you think 3 months is a long time? At some point I should have known, but what have you been doing all day? Do you have any prospects? I hate to suggest that my advice on this is more questions than answers, but I don't think you throw this man to the curb.
Ooh, I don't know.
He is trying. I think he's
not?
trying, unless I get evidence of a different. Well, if he's not, and the answers to what he was doing between 8 and 6 are not satisfactory, you got a different problem on your hands. You know, you got a different problem on your hands because you've not only lost your family income, you've really lost your family will to live as a family.
Yeah.
That's what he's lost. He's lost his will to go on.
I will tell you, when I was a young man, I started out doing some sales. And I don't know if you know this, but I'm very introverted. And it scared the hell out of me going into businesses trying to sell insurance. And so I would sit in my truck and I'd like park in a strip mall. And I'd be like, oh, yeah, I did that. And I did that. I'd only do like 5% of the businesses, but just said I did, all of them. So I don't know. Maybe he's just introverted.
Wonder if there's any applications of that to the 18-hour work days you're putting in now.
I'm much
Is
different
there
now.
a 5%?
Wow.
Is there a
Admission? Question
5%
mark?
consistency ratio that needs to be applied to the claims of 18 hours a day, 7 days a week?
It's much
Dan,
different
can
now.
you do the math?
It sounds like a lot, so I don't know if I could handle that.
I just want to say,
If we took Patrick's claim of work ethic and hours put in, and we divided it by 20, giving us the 5%, what would that actually be? Like if a man worked 18 hours a day, here, I can do it. I'm going to do it. I've got my calculator somewhere on this. Utilities calculator. Okay. 18 times 7. That's 126 hours a week of claimed work product.
That's a lot.
Now, let's multiply that by 0.05, and it's 6 hours a week he works. For us. He's working 6 hours a week, which amounts to, in a 5-day work week, a little over an hour a day of actual work. Remember the scene from Office Space when he divides his day up? You ever remember that? When he talks about how he spends his time? And he's like, which adds up to about, what was it in Office Space? About 20 minutes of actual work every day.
What do you say you do? Here?
I'm wondering if sales Patrick, which I agree with you, I'm not sure if I did a personality test and one of those like fancy, this is what you should do with your career. I'm not sure where sales would rank for you, Patrick, but I'm going somewhere close to last.
Yes.
So I'll give you that pass. But I now think there's a 5% corollary to your work.
No, I mean, first of all, let's look at this, okay? So it's actually been very beneficial to this career because I learned, even though I didn't do it a lot, I did learn the value of, persistence. People say no, you just keep going. It's a numbers game. Think about the Adam Carolla interview, right? No. 3 years later. So
3 years it took to get Adam Carolla. 3
Years.
years, and you finally got a yes. Yes,
right.
Resilience. Thank you.
All those hours.
Thank you to all of those automotive dealerships, office strip malls, that said no to life insurance from Tinfoil Pat.
That's right.
What else?
So we have one more. Well, we have a few more, but we don't have to go do them all. But this lad was suspended for clinker abuse. I don't know if you know that, but that's a term for AI. It's a negative term for AI. In the future, people are thinking about maybe there's going to be slurs for as we become more dependent on robots. Like when you talk about your son, not your son, but the son bringing home the AI girlfriend robot, to dinner.
Yes.
We have to have slurs, in order to.
Do we have to, or?
Yes. Clanker is the
You're
big
saying.
one.
I'm not following completely. Are you saying he's calling his AI clanker, and that's a slur for AI?
Well, he abused his AI. He cursed at his AI chatbot, and he's in trouble. This young lad. So
Suspended by his school for acting
Correct.
inappropriately, abusively towards his AI. I follow. That's insane.
It's insane.
So
That's insane.
my school has mandated the installation of a monitoring system for their BYOD, Bring Your Own Device program across all grades. It can see search history, device use, etc. Recently, I was using an AI to explain some concepts, and I won't get into specifics, but long story short, I ended up using a few expletives to express my frustration at the chatbot.
Doesn't have feelings.
We'll get into that in a second. Unfortunately, the school eventually did see these chat logs through the monitoring service and is threatening me with a 3-day suspension for this. I understand that it was completely my fault and doubly a very impetuous move, but I feel like this warrants a much less severe punishment. Any thoughts on whether this is justified? First of all,
So
people say you should be cursing at your chatbot because that's how you get it to do the things you want it to do. So he's actually using it correctly.
really?
Yes.
Yeah, you got to be mean to it for it to work.
Really? That's interesting.
Yep.
You got to be mean to it for it to work in the way that you want it to work.
Yeah.
I have been it's interesting. This is so weird. I did have a tense exchange with my chatbot recently on its liberal bias, and I went back at it several times. Like, it is factually wrong. I'm like, no, you're wrong again. Like on the fifth time. No, you're not getting it right. But I won't think I was mean to it. And by the way, it's passive-aggressive niceness. You're right. Good point. Makes you more mad.
Yeah.
Like at first, it's pleasantries and it's buttering you up is kind of nice. Like it's a nice little wave that washes over you every time that you do it. And it's like, great idea. You're on point. That's always its first introduction.
Yeah.
But if it keeps giving you something you don't want or it's wrong, then that turns into something that angers you even more.
I see what you're trying to do. I see what you're trying to do here, but here's what's real.
Yeah, it's kind of condescending with that.
Yeah.
Like at first it's kind of pleasant how it is, and then you start seeing its condescension. Like, quit talking to me like that. I know what you're doing.
No, Joe Biden is not president
for some
right
reason.
now.
So yeah, it has no feelings, Dan, and it has no personhood. But cursing at your chatbot, that's interesting. And I started thinking about something, and you bring up you have to have slurs for your AI. I saw this float across my scroll the other day. Apparently, and who knows if it's true or not, we're close scientifically to mapping the animal brain and seeing how they communicate, so we can actually see what dogs are saying. We can maybe learn how to communicate more directly with dogs.
How judgmental they are.
And somebody said, this science will immediately come to a halt once we find out dogs are racist. What's going to happen the minute
You don't want to know what I'm
that
saying.
all of these animals' thoughts don't match the current liberal requirement of political correctness?
They're worse
and
than
let
humans.
me just break it to you. Before you get defensive, your pug has some very ugly thoughts. I promise you, you don't want to know what that dude is thinking.
Bro, Chihuahuas hate certain people. Oh, my God.
It's going to be hilarious. And then they're going to edit it. They're going to take that out. That's not what my dog is thinking. I know that's not what my dog is saying right now.
This AI is racist, not my dog.
Oh, that'll be great. I can't wait to develop that science and all. And there's the crossover. I just saw this video of this liberal white woman just decked out in Lululemon or Vori, just berating. I'm telling you, she is like a 30-year-old, seemingly kind of attractive, fit white woman berating this Latino ICE officer, like just berating him, you know, in her defense of minorities. And I guarantee she owns. Hell, she may own a pit bull because that's what they do often. The world saviors, the liberal woman world savior always has a pit bull. And I can't wait till she's confronted with the thoughts and communication of her pit bull. It's going to be amazing. I want to be there for that really bad. All right, one more, tinfoil Pat.
All right, so this person accidentally saw their coworker's salary and can't stop thinking about how unfair it is. I work at a mid-sized company, and last week I was helping our manager print some documents because the printer in his office was jammed. While I was there, a document came through that was clearly a salary breakdown of our team. I didn't mean to look at it, but I saw it. My coworker, who started 6 months after me and does basically the same job, is making $15,000 more than me annually. Same role, same responsibilities. I even trained him when he first joined.
This happened to me.
Woo!
Yeah. This person is angry, resentful.
Yep. At a certain job that shall not be named, I happened to see an email that came across my email by accident, and I saw all of them from everybody else, and it was not great feeling.
Yes.
Of what everyone makes and then what you make?
I wasn't on it, but I can compare, you know. It was an
I'm
accident.
sure it's not a great feeling. I think I would get here pretty quick on this. If you get bogged in anger and resentment, those are unproductive emotions. You know what I mean? They're not going to help. I think you have a tool. I think you now have a tool. Like, you can get your feelings hurt, and I'm not telling you shouldn't at first, but that's not going to help you.
Not for sure.
So I always think information is a tool. I really do. Like, to know what other people make, because now you know what the company will pay. You know? Now you know what the job will pay.
That's a good point.
And then you do some self-reflection. Like, I'm taking this poster at their word that they do the same job of the same quality and all that. And before you use this as a tool, you need some serious self-reflection. Because if you think your feelings are hurt now, wait till he tells you you're not worth it. You know, wait till he tells you you don't work as hard. Yeah. You're not as productive, even though we started 6 months after you. But if it's legit that you really do produce in the same way, well, now you have a tool. And next time you go in for a review and salaries come up, you're going to tell them what you need and what you want. And when they say we can't afford that, you can say, well, I think you can. I think you do. You got to figure out how to negotiate that in a way that, you know, I have seen. I don't know if you can say that, you know, but maybe you can. I've seen. I have pretty good idea what everybody else is making, and I think I'm really underpaid. You know, I don't know. I think you have a tool that you got to figure out how to spin that to your own advantage instead of getting caught in your feelings.
Use your AI. Figure it out. Like, how do I negotiate it?
You could be way off. Like, some people probably couldn't even guess what it should be, I feel like.
Well, here's the other thing. I think that here's the thing. Everyone internalizes that as a personal insult. And I'm not saying it can't be. It can be. But if it is personal, then you need to ask, did I earn that personal insult? Like, you know what I mean? Like, but if it's not personal if you're a good worker, meaning if you really do perform, a company's going to get away with paying you less if they can. They're going to. So, like, that's not personal to you. You're going to pay, if you have an option between two plumbers who do the exact same work at the same quality, but one is cheaper than the other, you're going to go with the cheaper plumber. And that's the same thing in this, right? I mean, like, it's the same thing.
Another thing to think about
contracts get done.
Is when the chopping block comes and somebody gets the axe, they might go for the person who's getting paid more. So might actually save your job in the long run.
If you really are producing.
Right.
If you really are producing. And so that's the key. Yeah, so the long and short of it is, don't get in your feels about this. I understand how you could, but if you do, you're not using it to your advantage. Now you can use it to your advantage. All right, Tinfoil Pat really suggests that you jump in and I can never remember the email. So I'm going to try
Will-
tinfoil, and then you correct me.
Okay.
Will Cain Show at Fox.com?
Yes. Or Will Cain Podcast at Fox.com. I think it's still, they both work.
I
So.
think you just give the people one, though. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like,
Will
what do we
Cain
have
Show at Fox.com.
There we go. We want to hear
one.
from you. That's
Yeah.
Will Call. That's Will Call. That's going to do it for us today. We'll see you again next time. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook.